Welcome to this introductory video that will try and explain what geography and sustainable urban and regional planning is all about, and more importantly, what it is not about. You are receiving this video because you are currently still undecided about what direction you want to take your studies at Grand Valley into. So let's start by looking at this chart. And this chart is not all-inclusive. It is merely an example of the diversity that exists within geography and also urban and regional planning. Most majors and minors at Grand Valley have a spatial dimension, which means that if you have the right training, you are qualified to perform spatial analysis, perform spatial examinations, create spatial data sets for that specific discipline. I think this is especially relevant for undecided majors because there are so many possible disciplines that you might be interested in. And, once you go down one path, does that kind of exclude pursuing some other directions? This is relevant because careers today are very, very dynamic. It is almost a given that any graduate from Grand Valley starting in a position anywhere will likely be doing something totally different in 5, 10, 15 years from now as people evolve on the job, within the field, and transition in between fields. The GeoSpatial platform is ideally suited to give you a critical skill set and yet maintain future employment flexibility. Let's look at this chart, and we see on one side within the discipline that there is a cluster of physical geography subjects, and on the other side there is a cluster of human geography subjects. Again, there are many more, but you have to keep it manageable. But one does not operate to the exclusion of the other, and therefore there is a critical spatial interface that exists between physical and human geography. And that critical spatial interface also sort of exists in future employment scenarios. What is it that you can do in political geography that might overlap down the road with climatology, meteorology? And of course, we can make these crosslinks until, the end of time. And of course, this is a reality that exists at any scale, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, or globally. And again, from a future employment perspective, having that scaling flexibility can only help you. So being able to model any of these subjects is at the core of a functional geographer, urban and regional planner today. As you can see at this next slide, there is the real world, and the geographer, urban and regional planner needs to break that up into digestible pieces of information and be able to model that in order to gain a deeper understanding. But we cannot model these data slices in total isolation. There are symbiotic relationships between all these layers. And it doesn't matter how you approach it, that symbiotic relationship will always be there. Feel free to take a look at the webpage for the Department of Geography and Sustainable Planning. There is quite a bit of information there. Now, the remainder of this video is really dedicated to exploring the careers associated with a degree in Geography and Sustainable Planning, Geography and Sustainable Urban and Regional Planning, and the pay associated with those careers. Ultimately, this cannot be an abstract process. I think we have been able to employ our majors and minors with a very high degree of success and a very high degree of job satisfaction, but also with a very high degree of down the road job satisfaction and job promotion and job evolution. So without dwelling any more on that, let's go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and see what their information tells us about careers in geography and planning. Okay, here's one example of the Bureau of Labor Statistics displaying all relevant information associated with cartography and photogrammetrist. This job title today would be more like a geospatial analyst. Now, I can spend an hour on this webpage, and I am not going to do that. But it does sort of illustrate what the pay associated with a four-year degree is, and what the outlook is for future employment. So let's take a look at what they have to say about this particular profession.
Mapmakers of the past may have labeled unknown territory, "Here be dragons," but today's mapmakers rely on detailed measurements from satellite imagery to describe even those areas hidden from human eyes. Cartographers and photogrammetrists are the technologically skilled professionals who collect and interpret geographic information to create maps. While they share many characteristics, the two fields differ in the products of their work. Cartographers design accessible maps for general use, while photogrammetrists create specialized maps of Earth's surface features. They obtain geographic data from a variety of sources, including aerial cameras, satellites, and lasers attached to drones, planes, or cars. Some maps require gathering data about a population, including demographics or population density. Maps may sometimes be made for a particular purpose, such as regional or education planning or emergency response. Although cartographers and photogrammetrists spend much of their time in offices, certain jobs require travel to the areas being mapped. Most work in architectural and engineering firms, local government, or technical consulting services. Full-time, normal business hours are typical, though those who do field work may have longer workdays. A bachelor's degree in cartography, geography, geomatics, or surveying is the most common path of entry into this field. Courses in computer programming, engineering, math, and GIS technology are helpful. Some states require cartographers and photogrammetrists to be licensed.
In Geography and Sustainable Planning, we also have an environmental track, which is kind of bundled with remote sensing and GIS as well. And I think, any environmental scientist without that geospatial skill set would be severely handicapped. And again, this is a summary of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And again, the pay is a living wage. And the job outlook for the next 10 years is fairly decent. So let's take a look at what their informational video can tell us.
Environmental scientists and specialists use their knowledge of the natural sciences to protect the environment and human health. They develop strategies to clean up polluted areas, advise policymakers, and work with industry to reduce waste or hazards. Environmental scientists gather and analyze data to shed light on important questions, including how to prevent or handle environmental problems, then use their findings to inform the public, private industry, government officials, and others about environmental hazards. Day-to-day tasks can vary a lot among these specialists. Climate change analysts study the effects of changing climatic conditions on ecosystems. Environmental health specialists study how environmental factors affect community and individual human health. Environmental restoration planners determine how to clean up polluted sites and assess costs. And industrial ecologists work with industry to develop sustainable and efficient practices that limit adverse impacts on the environment. While environmental scientists generally work full-time in an office or laboratory, some head to the field to check out environmental conditions and gather samples of air, soil, water, or food. Most entry-level positions require a bachelor's degree in a natural science or related field, but a master's degree is often needed for advancement. Whether teaching or practicing methods to keep our air, water, and land clean and free of health risks, the work of environmental scientists hits home.
Moving on to yet another job category, urban and regional planners. Look at the 10-year forecast here, about an 11% growth. And again, the entry pay is good. Okay, here they are saying that a master's degree is required, but our graduates sort of belie that a little bit. We have dozens of former graduates working in the field. Now, they might have moved on and gotten a master's degree in public administration or in geography or in urban regional planning. But the point is still the same, that this field is very promising and could lead to a very, very highly satisfactory career. So let's take a look at their video.
From Manhattan's sky-high grid to the tangled sprawl of Los Angeles, urban and regional planners play a key role in making sure cities become more connected communities rather than concrete jungles. Urban and regional planners develop plans for how land will be used and oversee complex projects that help accommodate population growth while retaining or revitalizing functional communities. The zoning policies they administer have an impact not just on historic buildings, but also on the environment, housing, transportation, and more. Using statistical techniques, field investigations, and technology, urban and regional planners gather and analyze data to understand the current and future needs of their local area. They develop plans to address the needs they uncover, from planning new parks and schools to meet anticipated growth, or sheltering the homeless to making changes that might attract business development. Urban and regional planners present their project proposals to communities, officials, and planning commissions. Their recommendations help guide decision makers to consider all the factors involved in a new project. Most urban and regional planners work for local government. They may work evenings or weekends to attend meetings with neighborhood groups and frequently leave the office to inspect proposed development sites.
Okay, let's look at geographers in general. This job market is leveling off, but the pay is good. Now, the title geographer is probably losing somewhat of its sexiness appeal. When we talk about geospatial analyst, geospatial anything, those are the people that are the geographers. So this is a matter of semantics. But again, let's take a look at what it is that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is telling us.
If you've made a mental map of your neighborhood or learned how to use public transportation, you've practiced the observation and reasoning skills used by geographers. These scientists study Earth's features and the relationship of human activity to the planet. Many geographers do field work to gather data and study maps, photographs, and census reports for their research. They also create maps and geographic images, which may be used to guide decision-making related to land use and groups of people. Geographers usually focus on either Earth's physical aspects, such as landforms, waters, and natural resources, or on human geography, which explores the relationships of human activity to the physical environment. For example, using satellite imagery, a human geographer might research the impact of conflict on a region, its effects on water supply, farming practices, and emigration. Geographers rely on Geographic Information System Software, or GIS, and satellite imagery to collect data they need for their reports. Most geographers work standard full-time business hours. Some geographers travel to the region they are studying, which can mean visiting foreign countries and remote locations. Geographers need a bachelor's degree for most entry-level positions, including jobs in the federal government. GIS skills and geography knowledge are used in the work of surveyors, urban and regional planners, and geoscientists. A master's degree and related work experience are typically required for more advanced positions.
Okay, they mentioned GIS in the previous video. They mentioned geoscientist. Well, that happens to be a job title as well. And again, you can look at the median pay, which is probably more than most professors make at Grand Valley, and that's with a bachelor's degree. Okay, that's awkward. Maybe it is, but more power to you. In the job outlook, unlike geography itself, which is flat, is good. So again, let's look at what they have to say, and I think I have one more, and then we'll call it good.
Geoscientists dwell in an unusual frame of reference, studying evidence of events that happened millions of years ago to understand the present and try to foresee future geological events. Geoscientists study the physical aspects of the Earth, such as its composition, structure, and processes, to understand how it was formed and what forces shaped its features. Splitting their time between the lab, the office, and the field, geoscientists need a variety of skills. They need to be as comfortable and knowledgeable on a computer as they are on a hike, able to understand and critically analyze the samples and data they gather on a mountain peak, and just as capable of communicating their findings to an audience of non-scientists. Their tools may include a classic hammer and chisel to gather rock samples, along with sophisticated remote sensing equipment to gather a broader impression of an area. Specializations offer very different opportunities. Some analyze the probability of earthquakes and volcano eruptions and study layers of rock under building foundations to ensure a stable foundation. Others explore for and help develop oil and gas resources and clean up and reclaim land. Some geoscientists study the chemistry and movement of ocean waters and how they affect climate and weather. Most entry-level geoscientists have a bachelor's degree in a related science. Fortunately, geoscientists don't mind getting their hands dirty in a career that benefits human life on Earth.
It should have become kind of obvious to you by now that having a geospatial skill set is really at the center of all these jobs. And that doesn't go to say that, you have a geography major, and of course you can amplify that with minors in other areas, maybe a double major. So there are some synergies to be had. This last one is looking at climatology, meteorology, atmospheric sciences, climate change, sustainability, and all that is associated with that realm. And again, the job prospect is good, and the pay is good. So let's take a look at what they can tell us.
Even before breakfast, and certainly before leaving the house, most people consult the weather forecast. That essential item of news is provided by atmospheric and space scientists who study the weather and climate and examine how those conditions affect human activity and the Earth. Atmospheric scientists collect data from the field using instruments such as weather balloons, radar systems, and satellite imagery. Many write their own computer programs to model or predict weather developments and advise the public or their clients on risks caused by weather events and climate change. There are many types of atmospheric scientists. For example, weather forecasters use computer models to forecast short and long-term conditions for airports, farmers, utility companies, and others. Climate scientists model climate change to help plan building design and adapt agricultural production to changing conditions. Atmospheric scientists generally work full-time and may be called upon to work at odd hours or overtime, keeping the public informed during severe weather or monitoring conditions around the clock at a field station. They may work in government weather stations, laboratories and offices, or television and radio stations. Atmospheric scientists need a bachelor's degree in meteorology or a related earth science field for most positions. To lead research or teach at the college level usually requires a PhD or master's degree in the field.
Trying to keep this video to a reasonable length, but there's always so much good stuff here to share with people that are looking for a tangible career. Let's wrap things up by looking at professional credentials associated with a career in geospatial management and urban and regional planning. All right, one of the professional certifications is the American Institute for Certified Planners. It's something you do not just get overnight. You have to be working in the field. But if you look at what they're saying here is that employers recognize and reward AICP certification. On average, AICP certified planners earn $16,000 more annually than non-certified planners. So it requires a high degree of professionalism, but that's okay. So, definitely something to aim for if, in fact, you are interested in urban and regional planning. A second professional certification is the GIS Certification Institute. Again, this is a post 4-year degree certification that you can acquire after you've been on the job for a while, and you would get to put GISP behind your name. And as you can see here already, a quarter of these folks have titles like GIS Analyst, which when we looked at the earlier video, they were sort of like the cartographer, photogrammetrist. So I think in that sense, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has fallen behind a little bit. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. If this is something that you maybe are curious about or interested in, contact Geography and see what we can share with you. And if nothing else, hopefully we were able to share with you what geography is not. And if this is not your cup of tea, then that's fine. At least you know what geographers do. If you say, wait a moment, this is something that really maybe is something I want to look into further, feel free to contact us. All right. Thank you.